What if I told you that in the 90s, Linda Evangelista ruled fashion? She wasn't just on the runways, she owned them. She didn't just grace magazine covers, she defined them. Designers wanted her, photographers worshipped her, and the world couldn't take its eyes off her. But there was one thing that set her apart. She never smiled. While other supermodels flashed dazzling grins, Linda perfected the cold, sculpted gaze that made her an icon. It wasn't just a look, it was hers. A signature that set her apart from the rest. To the world, it was confidence, it was power. The kind of effortless cool only the titans of the fashion world could pull off. But behind the image was something else. Something she never wanted the cameras to see. This is the story of Linda Evangelista, the supermodel who refused to smile. Before she was a supermodel, before she was a fashion icon, Linda Evangelista was just a small-town girl with a dream. Born on May 10, 1965 in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, Linda grew up in a modest working-class family. Her father, an Italian immigrant, worked for General Motors, while her mother was a bookkeeper. Life was simple, predictable, a world away from the high fashion runways she would one day rule. But even as a child, Linda knew she was destined for something bigger. She wasn't the kind of girl who faded into the background. Even in her small town, people noticed her. At 16, she entered the Miss Teen Niagara beauty pageant. Sadly, she didn't win, but she caught the eye of a scout from Elite Model Management, and that changed everything. By 18, Linda was on a plane to New York signing with Elite Models. Soon after, she was off to Paris. The industry took notice immediately. High cheekbones, piercing blue-green eyes, a bone structure that looked sculpted by Michelangelo himself. But Linda wasn't just another pretty face. She could transform, adapt, become whoever the fashion world needed her to be. And that's exactly what made her stand out. Linda Evangelista wasn't just a model. She was a chameleon. One day, she was the embodiment of old Hollywood glamour. The next, she was androgynous, avant-garde, completely unrecognizable. By the late 80s, she was working with the biggest names in fashion, such as Versace, Chanel, Valentino, and Yves Saint Laurent. Photographers loved her. Designers fought over her. Then, in 1988, Peter Lindbergh captured her in a now legendary black and white photograph. A year later, that image, alongside Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, Naomi Campbell, and Tatiana Patitz, became the cover of British Vogue's January 1990 issue. It wasn't just a magazine cover, it was the birth of the supermodel era. And at the center of it all was Linda Evangelista. She had arrived, and soon she would redefine what it meant to be a fashion icon. By the early 90s, no runway felt complete, no magazine cover felt iconic, and no campaign felt powerful without Linda Evangelista. Fashion had evolved. It was no longer just about clothes. It was about the faces that defined them. And in a world where supermodels were becoming larger than life, Linda stood at the very top. Linda Evangelista wasn't just another beautiful woman wearing Chanel, Versace, or Valentino. She was fashion. Then came the moment that would cement her as a legend. In 1990, standing alongside her fellow supermodel Christy Turlington, Linda delivered a quote that would go down in fashion history. "We don't wake up for less than $10,000 a day." It was bold. It was unapologetic. And most importantly, it was true. At a time when models were often seen as just mannequins for designers, Linda Evangelista had redefined the game. She wasn't just another face for brands. She was the brand. Her career reflected that power. She became a permanent muse for Versace, regularly closing their most dramatic, high-energy shows. Her presence on magazine covers was unmatched. Appearing on over 700 covers worldwide, a record few models have ever approached. She walked for every major designer, from Chanel to Valentino, Dolce & Gabbana to Yves Saint Laurent, solidifying her status as the industry's most sought-after model. Photographer Steven Meisel, one of fashion's most influential creatives, considered her his ultimate muse. The two worked together constantly, producing some of the most iconic editorials of the era. But Linda wasn't just posing. She was shaping the very aesthetic of high fashion. Her ability to transform was unmatched. In 1988, she famously chopped her long hair into a bold pixie cut, a move that could have ended another model's career. Instead, it made her even more in demand, proving that Linda Evangelista didn't follow trends, she set them. But her power wasn't just in her ability to change, it was her presence. Linda didn't just walk down runways, she controlled them. She could shift the mood of an entire show with a single look. She didn't just wear the clothes, she made them unforgettable. Designers fought to have her in their campaigns. Photographers built entire shoots around her. If Linda Evangelista was involved, it wasn't just fashion, it was history in the making. And yet, despite all the confidence, all the power, there was something about her that made her different. She never smiled. The world assumed it was confidence, attitude. But the truth, Linda Evangelista was hiding something. And soon, that secret would define her as much as her career did. Beneath the perfectly composed expression was an insecurity she had carried for years, one that most people never even noticed. Linda Evangelista was self-conscious about her gums. Early in her career, she admitted she was terrified that smiling would cost her jobs. She thought her gums were too visible, that they took away from the perfection designers and photographers expected. In an industry obsessed with flawlessness, she convinced herself that showing too much of her real self could be a risk. So she held back. She kept her expressions controlled, her face poised, her emotions guarded. She let her eyes do the talking, let her bone structure sculpt an image of untouchable beauty. And it worked. Her serious expression became legendary. It made her appear powerful, mysterious, completely in control. No one questioned it. No one thought it was insecurity. If anything, it only made her more of an enigma. But behind the camera, behind the gowns and flashing lights, Linda was still human. She wasn't untouchable. And as the years passed, as the industry changed, and as the supermodel era began to fade, she was about to face battles that no amount of fame, beauty, or power could protect her from. As the 2000s arrived, the industry began to shift. The golden age of supermodels was fading, replaced by a new era where actresses, singers, and reality stars became the faces of fashion. The designers who once built their shows around Linda moved on to younger, fresher names. The industry that had once worshipped her had found new obsessions. And just like that, Linda Evangelista began to step out of the spotlight. She could have walked away gracefully, retired as an icon, and let time preserve her legacy. But that wasn't Linda. She still loved fashion. She still wanted to be part of it. Unlike some of her peers who transitioned into acting or business, she stayed connected to modeling, occasionally returning for special projects. But as the years passed, the pressure of aging in an industry that thrived on youth weighed on her. Then came 2015, the moment that changed everything. In an attempt to maintain her looks, Linda underwent full sculpting, a non-invasive procedure that promised to freeze away stubborn fat cells. It was marketed as a safer, easier alternative to liposuction, a way to sculpt and refine the body without surgery. It seemed like the perfect solution. Instead, it became her nightmare. Rather than reducing fat, the procedure triggered a rare condition called paradoxical adipose hyperplasia, causing the treated areas to grow larger, hardening into visible bulges. Her body changed in ways she never expected. The face and figure that had once been celebrated as a standard of beauty were now altered in a way that couldn't be undone. She tried everything: corrective surgeries, more treatments, anything to fix what had gone wrong. Nothing worked. For years, Linda Evangelista disappeared. No events, no photo shoots, no public appearances. She hid, consumed by shame, grief, and the fear that she would never return to the world she once ruled. This wasn't just about vanity. It was about identity. Her face, her body, her ability to transform in front of a lens had been her career, her art, her legacy. And now, she felt like it had been taken from her. The industry barely noticed her absence. The world moved on. For nearly 6 years, Linda lived in silence. She battled depression, isolated herself, and avoided cameras, mirrors, and even her own reflection. But then, in 2021, she made a decision. She wasn't going to disappear forever. She wasn't going to let this be the end of her story. And in 2022, she came back. Linda Evangelista came back the only way she knew how: on her terms. In 2022, she broke her silence with an exclusive People magazine interview, revealing the full extent of the cool sculpting disaster that had left her physically and emotionally scarred. For the first time, she spoke openly, vulnerably, without filters. She shared her pain, her struggles, and the deep depression that followed. The woman who once refused to show weakness in front of the camera was now exposing her most personal battle to the world, and the world listened. Her story sent shockwaves through the fashion industry, forcing conversations about aging, beauty standards, and the hidden dangers of cosmetic procedures. She filed a $15 million lawsuit against the company behind Cool Sculpting, alleging they failed to warn her about the risks. But more than legal action, Linda was fighting for something bigger: her right to exist outside of perfection. Shortly after, she made her official return to fashion. In September 2022, she graced the cover of British Vogue, her first major magazine shoot in years. The photos were elegant, dramatic, unmistakably Linda. But this time, something was different. The lighting was deliberate, the angles carefully chosen to conceal the areas affected by the procedure. She wasn't hiding, she was choosing how she wanted to be seen. Her return wasn't about providing she could still be a model. It was about providing she was still Linda Evangelista. Since then, she has remained a powerful voice in the industry, using her platform to advocate for self-acceptance, body autonomy, and the transparency in beauty standards. She refuses to let the industry erase her. She refuses to be remembered as just a cautionary tale. She is still here, still standing, still shaping fashion in her own way. She may no longer be on every billboard, but Linda Evangelista's legacy is untouchable. Not just for her beauty, not just for her ability to transform in front of a camera, but for her resilience, her honesty, her refusal to disappear, and the realization that she never needed to smile to be remembered.